Hey, everybody, welcome. You're listening to Uncuffed Conversations brought to you by Project 180.
Where we talk real, no filters, no judgment, just truth and transformation.
I'm Seth Campbell.
And I'm Yogi. Together, we're bringing you voices from the street, from the struggle, and from the comeback.
We've been there, from dark places to new beginnings. And this space right here is proof that change is real if you want it bad enough.
So lock in, open up, and let's get uncuffed.
So we have with us today
Benu, what's up?
What's going on?
You going on.
Yeah.
You on camera, baby. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
So tell me about the beginning, man. What was life like for you? Because we're going to go into, for the audience, we're going to go into Uncut Conversations. This is real, raw, uncut, unfiltered story, right? About guys who have been through the struggle like myself and Yogi have and have made it out the other side, right? They've came to a place where they're able to sit in front of this camera today and tell you about their lives. And we're going to bring you Bendu's life. So Ben, give me a little bit.
Some backstory. So I was born on an Air Force base in Michigan, right, in 1981. Both of my parents were in the Air Force. My dad came here from England, right, to get his citizenship. He joined the Air Force, and that's where he met my mom. So I was born up there. Both of my parents were addicts and alcoholics. So their marriage didn't last long. I mean, it was a struggle, from the jump. My first memory of life is sticking my hands on a stove and burning my hands. My mom was, like I said, she was an addict and an alcoholic, so she was never really a present parent, so to speak, right? So there was a lot of things that happened to me when I was a kid that probably, obviously definitely shouldn't have happened. A lot of abuse, sexual, physical, mental, emotional, things like that. So I grew up pretty rough, man. It was definitely a learning curve, right? Having to be an adult when I didn't have one, as far as like to be an example for me to, grow into. And so it was difficult, right? And I always felt out of place. So I just kind of stayed to myself and kept my nose in books. And that was pretty much it,
So let me ask you, what's your earliest memory of having to do for yourself?
Well, like I said, my mom wasn't there, and then my stepdad, he wasn't in the picture until I was probably 5 or 6. So really just taking care of my little sister. I have a sister that's 2 years younger than me, right? And so like I'd have to cook and feed her, or whatever, change diapers, stuff like that, and clean up the house, make sure everything was cleaned up by the time he got home. If he even came home. So it was a very dysfunctional family, right? And so like my job was to just, like, I grew up when it was kind of that time when it was like kids are to be seen and not heard, you know what I mean? And it was like there was no back talking or anything like that. So it was just kind of behind the scenes, just trying to make things happen. Because my mom was bombed all the time, man. If it wasn't pills, it was alcohol. So there was, it was always literally just picking her up, getting her to bed, getting her cleaned up, making sure that my sister ate, making sure that I ate, and just trying to kind of keep it together where she, dropped the ball.
So you had to grow up at a young age.
Yeah.
Safe to say?
Yeah.
What was it like? How long did you, because you said you were born on a naval base, right?
Air Force base.
Air Force base.
Yeah.
I apologize. What, how long did that last for?
So I was only there for probably a year, and then so like when I was 2, we had already moved. My mom had mental health issues, right, as well as addiction issues. So we had moved. I think she got dishonorably discharged, and we had moved to Southern Illinois at that time. And so like I was literally like just past my 2nd birthday whenever I burnt my hands. And then so I spent a lot of time in hospitals too as a kid, because I've had like probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 skin grafts, multiple surgeries, on my hands, because like scar tissue doesn't grow, right? So like I can't open my hand all the way because all the burns that are on there. And like I've had to have skin grafts. I got like donor sites and stuff on my legs and my hips and all that where they've taken skin. And now they can do skin wherever. They can do cadaver skin, they can do pig skin, whatever. But back in the 80s, they had to use your skin. So
what do you think that did to you growing up? Like your first memory being hands on the hot stove, right? I mean, that sounds pretty traumatic.
It
if you
is.
ask me.
It is. I mean, you'd think I would learn, right? Like if it burns, don't touch it. But I mean, that kind of became the, the pitfall of my life, right? It was like, ow, quit it, ow, quit it, ow, quit it. You know what I mean? I just kept doing it, right? But I mean, I was pretty much doomed from the start, man. I mean, the first time I ever got high was with my mom. I was 13 years old, and like we did some meth together. So it was like I didn't have a parent, right? She tried to be a friend, right? Or just be somebody that was there that was like trying to be cool, right? And it was a train wreck. It was horrible. And and then I had, the opposite end of the spectrum with my stepdad, who was a tyrant, right? And he used to just beat the crap out of me or my mom or whatever. And so it was like I always felt like I had to protect her, right? And at all costs, right? And that really messed me up later on in life. I'm just now getting to a point to where I've been able to detach my feelings, right? Of, I guess, I don't know, it's like a hero complex almost, you know what I mean? Like I literally would make excuses for her like over and over and over again. And yeah, I mean, it was rough, man.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Just a little bit further back.
Mhm.
You said you started getting high with your mom when you was 13.
Yeah, like hard drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that? Was it, Mom, can I try that? Or, hey, come here, let me, because decisions get made, right?
Yeah. So she was like, I know you're gonna do it anyway, so I'd rather you do it at home, right? Kind of deal, right? Because I was already smoking pot, but like, I mean, yeah, everybody was smoking weed. And I'd already drank alcohol, but like it wasn't like a all the time thing. But yeah, it was definitely her stuff, and it was definitely her idea.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off. And the reason I asked that
Mhm.
is because, if it's your idea, then I want to see what that's like.
Right.
But if it's her idea,
Right.
I don't want to let her down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's explain.
Well, so like I saw it was everybody I was around, right? There was always drugs, right? There was always drugs around everybody that I knew, even at that age, right? I just hadn't really dabbled in it yet. And so like she and I used to be close in the sense of like we would communicate, right? But like the things we would talk about and the things we would do together, it's just like it's not anything that a parent and a child should do. You know what I mean? So like I can say that I had this bond with her, but it was, if anything, it was probably like a trauma bond, right? Just because like I felt like I had to always protect her, right? So like, and she felt like she didn't need to be a parent. I guess she felt like she had to be a friend, And so it was a weird dynamic, right? And for the longest time, what she taught me is that you can't save people from themselves, right? Unfortunately, she killed herself in 2011 with pills. And the first time she ever tried to do that, I was 8, right? And so it was and I'll never forget it because like I remember back then they used to have like whenever you would go to the hospital, like a regular hospital, they had like a psych ward, right? Like a certain floor where you would go, and now they have like actual hospitals just for that, right? But back then, like you would literally have a ward where there was like a security guard sitting outside, right? And you had to take your belt and your shoelaces out, right? And that's where I had to go to see my mom. And so I was, like I said, I read a lot of books. I was a very smart kid, right? And I was in the GATE program, which is like gifted and talented education. So I was way ahead of my time as far as like knowing of the world. I just hadn't really experienced the world, right? But I'd learned about it through books, so I knew what was going on. I knew my mom had a drug problem. The biggest disappointment, right, was the fact that was that I love my mother so much, right? And I felt like, why is my love for her not enough for her to want to live, right? Because I knew she'd try to kill herself, and they wouldn't talk about it. They never talked about it. I didn't even talk with my stepdad about it until after she had died, and I told him, I was like, I know what happened, right? And so literally I went through that for 22 years with her, right? And so because like she was on medication, that was all prescribed to her, but like copious amounts. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? I mean, enough to kill a horse. And the problem was, is that like over the last 10 years of her life, I probably saw her on life support. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating, probably 40 or 50 times,
Mm.
right? And whether it's an overdose or a withdrawal or just her being sick, right? The result's still the same. I've literally carried my mother into the hospital. I mean, puking and just crapping all over me, right? And carry her in there, and all they do is they pump her full of dope and send her home. If she doesn't have to go on life support, you know what I'm saying? And there was so many times that happened, and I'd just sit there with her, you know what I'm saying? I'd sit there with her, and then we'd fight because I'd be like, what are you doing? Because they tell her you're gonna die. You know what I'm saying? If you don't get it together, you're gonna die. And she'd be like, oh, I'm gonna do better, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she was diabetic, she had COPD by the time she died. There was so many things, right? Plus there was the mental illness, right, that went untreated, right? So there was, I mean, she took so many meds, man. It was just like handfuls of pills. And so um sorry. It it was rough, man. You know what I mean? It was rough,
Absolutely.
because it like it so I'll go into that a little bit. When she killed herself, we literally had an argument like 2 days before it happened about her suicide attempts and her hospital trips and all that stuff. And I told her, and I was done. You know what I mean? I was done. I was tired, and I was like, and I was in active addiction at the time, and I was, selling drugs, and I was doing whatever. But the thing was, is like she called me up one night, and she was bombed, and she was like, "You need to come get your stuff from the house, take it to storage, whatever." And I go to the house to get the stuff, and I'm knocking on the door, and she's not answering the phone, she's not doing nothing, right? And so like I've literally walked in the house before and found my mother like, unresponsive, face down in a laundry basket, like I mean multiple times. And so like I'm worried that something's happened to her. And then by the time I'm literally about to break in the house, and by the
Mhm.
time she answers the phone, she's like pissed at me because like, you know what I mean? She's like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what I want?" I was like, "You called me and told me I needed to come here, right?" And she was bombed on pills, falling asleep. I mean, she had oxygen and she was smoking. I mean, it was just like completely reckless, man, out of control. And like I lost it and I was mad. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I love you so much, right? That I know that somebody who doesn't want to live is gonna find a way to die, right? And I was like, and I don't know what it is with you, right? But you don't want to live. You gave up on living years ago, you know? And when I tell you she gave up on living, like I've never seen anybody that suffered from clinical depression like she did. Like the last 2 years of her life, because she lived with my stepdad, um, I couldn't even go around her. You know what I mean? She wouldn't bathe. Like she would come home from the hospital, and you know how like when you have like they put all that tape on you for
Mhm.
the IVs and stuff, like and like if you don't get it off you, it gets dirty.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like sticky residue.
Mhm.
Like it would just be all over her, right? And she would go back in the hospital, and like and I would clean her up while she was there, but I couldn't go to the house, right? Because that house was like it was a prison for me. You know what I mean? I spent years there getting high. And so we had this argument, right? And I was like, I love you so much that if you don't, and as messed up as this may sound, I was like, I know you don't want to live, right? And you've given up on life. So like as I'm not saying I'm giving you my blessing, but if this is what you're gonna do, then do it because I'm not gonna be here anymore. You know what I mean? Like I just can't. I can't do it anymore. So if you got to stop playing with this because it's been 22 years of this. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. You know, and and sorry.
No, don't be sorry, man.
Um.
Take your
So
time.
she we had that argument, right? And I was like, I can't, I'm done, and so I got pissed off and I left, and she called me like 3 or 4 times, and I hung up the phone on her. I wouldn't even talk to her because I mean she was belligerent, you know what I mean? She was out of her mind on pills, and and 2 days later she was dead. You know what I mean? So um I never got to apologize, right? I never got to tell her that I love her. Um there's a lot of things that and I blame myself for that, right? For years. And that's actually what sent me back out, like really back out. And thanks, man. And and I ended up in prison like 2.5 years later. Because I couldn't I just couldn't live with myself, right? I felt directly responsible because literally the last conversation we had, was about her killing herself, and then she kills herself,
Right.
So yeah, that, yeah,
I I can just about imagine.
yeah,
Uh, I've lived a similar situation, uh, and I was gonna ask you to string together some words about how that made you feel. You know, it's visible how it made you feel,
yeah.
but if you could string together what that kind of trauma does to someone, because that's deep trauma. You were young.
It destroys you. It if it goes untreated and it goes unacknowledged, right? Which I'm really good at, right? I'm really good at keeping things inside, right? I'm really good at wearing a mask and pretending like everything's fine when I'm dying inside, right?
Festering.
Yeah. And so what happens is that I can compartmentalize, right? But eventually those compartments get full, right?
Right.
And so it's gonna come to a boiling point and you act out, right? It will rear its ugly head in so many different aspects of your life, really every aspect, right? It's ruined relationships, right? It's ruined sobriety. It's ruined so many things for me, right? Because I was incapable of dealing, right? Or even being honest with anybody about my feelings, right? Or um how it affected me, right? Because as a man, right, you feel like um you're supposed to be this rock, right? And um and you're supposed to be that provider and you're supposed to be the one that everybody can turn to and you're not supposed to have feelings, right? Toxic masculinity,
Toxic
Right.
right?
masculinity.
And so like and that's what I grew up in a house where not only did I get beat, but like I would get beat for crying. You know what I'm saying? For getting beat, right? So like at a very young age, I literally would start laughing, right? That was a response, right? And that would just piss him off worse because but I'm like, what am I supposed to do, right?
Right.
Because and so like it's carried over into my adult life. Like when I get really hurt physically or something really really hurts, like I have it's a disturbing laugh that comes out of me. But the thing is like it it will eat at you, right? And anything that you have that you care about, it will seep into that, right? In some way, it's almost like an infection, you know what I'm saying, or like just a shadow that just kind of creeps in over time, man, and it literally taints every aspect of your life. And it's only in the last um, I don't know year that I've been able to get the help that I've needed, right? As far as dealing with the trauma, um, getting properly medicated for the mental health issues that I have, and and then my biggest thing is trauma therapy, right?
And what's so wild is, unfortunately, like, your mother's story is a lot like my own. I
Yeah,
can imagine your own, right? I know for me, like, addiction was just a symptom, right?
right.
The root cause was my mental health.
Absolutely, it's not just a drug problem; it's a me problem,
And
right?
I
Yeah,
can't help but think about, like, you mentioned, the tape on your
yeah,
mother, right?
yeah,
From the
yeah,
and like, that's so many times, right? Overdoses, thing in the
yeah,
hospital, waking up in the hospital, waking up in crisis
yeah,
units. There's been times I've admitted suicidal thoughts to try to get help for the,
yeah.
for the addiction, and it's and I commend you for talking about that today,
Yeah. The
right?
vulnerability is.
It so the lady that I do trauma with, right? I won't say her name, but she um she taught me that I have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Sure.
And that's the biggest part of recovery period, right? Is like if there's no discomfort, there's no growth and there's no change, right? And for the longest time I was stuck, right? And I was a prisoner in my own mind, right? But I was also a prisoner of my own regards because like it I've always had choices, right? and I've always had options, right? But like you tend to go, what did she say that one day? You'll take familiar hell over unfamiliar heaven any day, right? And that's the thing is like, because we're so programmed, right, to
Mhm.
to go with what we know, right? And like our brains can't differentiate, right, whether it's good or bad. It just knows what it's done to keep us alive before, so it's gonna default to that every time until you change it.
So let me ask. So when's when's the first memory of your mother in drugs, and how did that catapult you? When did your full blown addiction start?
The first time I ever did it, you know. So like the first time I ever did, I did it was back then, it was crank, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? But like, I mean, it was methamphetamines. And I mean, the first time I did it, I felt like I was Superman, right? And it was crazy because like I
Cape
was,
and all.
yeah, yeah, bro. You couldn't tell me. I mean,
You
literally, you know what I'm saying? Like
you
you
about
can't,
big as Superman,
yeah.
by the way.
So it's crazy because like I instantly was hooked on it, right? And so I have genetically, I'm predisposed to have an addictive personality because of who my parents are. And so it, I mean, instantly. And so like it progressed from that. I went from smoking it, that was 13. By the time I was 17, I was injecting it. It wasn't so much meth then, it was coke, right? And then so like I would go on these binges, right? And I would be so out of it, right? I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything, but I'd blown every penny that I had. I'd browbeat her to get money from her, and we just had this toxic relationship. And so like I would be so amped up and I couldn't sleep and I was just freaking out, and she would give me oxycontins to come down, and so like it was that started my love for opiates, right? And that that was like the beginning of the end for me right there.
So being this is uncuffed conversations, when did when's the first time the cuffs went on?
Oh man, as a kid, I was let's see, 15 years old. I got kicked out of school for punching a coach in the face. And yeah, so I had this horrible relationship, like I said, with my stepfather. And we used to fight all the time. So by the time I was 15, dude, I was like, I don't know, 6'2", probably like 230, 240 pounds.
You were Superman.
Yeah. And so like I thought because I was bigger than him, right, that the tables would turn and that I could return the favor as far as, kicking some ass. And like it didn't happen. Right. So when I got big enough and bold enough to fight back, that's when he was like, you gotta go. You know what I mean? And so yeah, and so what happened was they kicked me out of the house. And then I stayed gone for like 2 weeks, and then they called the cops and said I ran away. Right. And then I told the cop, I was like, because I went to a different county and I stayed with a friend, but I was like, and I had a voicemail on my you know whatever, and it was like she's like, you can't come back here. My mom was like, you no longer are allowed here. And so I played it for the cop. I was like, listen, I was like, they said I can't come home. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going someplace where they said I can't come home. He said, it doesn't matter. By law, you have to be there. And so like I ended up going to juvie. And it was just fights, man. I fought my entire life. You know what I mean? And it's always been like it's always been a battle, and so like I was a very aggressive kid, right? Because of trauma. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't and I'll go back a little bit. So like the sexual abuse that went on for a couple years, right? It was a babysitter and her husband. And um and and the problem was is like I was it happened under the guise that if I said anything that they would hurt my mother and my sister. So even then, bro, I felt like I had to protect her, right? And so it and then I found out recently, I'll get real vulnerable with you guys. I found out recently through trauma therapy because I used to be like, how did they not know? You know what I'm saying? How did my mom not know? Right. Because like CPS came to school and they made me do like this acting out with like these dolls and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And like, has anybody ever touched you inappropriately? Or, like basically like go through a day of your life and all this stuff. But I knew what they were doing. Right. I knew that that's something, they knew something was up. And so I BS'd them, you know what I mean? And so I found out recently, it just kind of came to me when I was doing trauma therapy. I was like, she did know. You know what I mean? Not only did she know, but she facilitated it. right? And was probably compensated for it monetarily or, with drugs or something like that. Like that's the kind of stuff that used to happen, And so like for the longest time, man, I had this like I said, this I would incorporate her into everything, and I would make excuses. I would justify, I would rationalize everything about her, right? And because I spent my entire life trying to save this woman. And what helped me get over that was I wrote like a she had me write a letter, right? Because like every time we would do the therapy sessions, right, it would like come up and it would always like go back to my mom, right? And I'm like, and so I wrote like a 20-page letter. And remember I told you about it. Whenever I graduated from that program, my counselor was like, "Here's your letter," right? And I was like, "What is that?" You know what I'm saying? And it literally, I had forgotten what it was, right? Because I had processed it. I had written that letter, and then we had done a couple sessions on it, right? And then I processed it, and I literally let it go, And that's the beauty, right? Of the because don't get me wrong, man, the 12-step program is essential for my life, right? Because I'm an addict, right? But the fine tuning, right, of what's wrong with me, right? And you know what I'm saying? Like the the really dark, deep stuff that you're not going to talk about in a meeting, right? That I've been working on. I've been doing trauma therapy for almost a year, right? And I am who I am today, right? And I'm capable of being who I am today because of that, right? And also because of the person that I do it with. Like she's an amazing human being, and I trust her implicitly, right? And that's the biggest thing is being able to get vulnerable like that with someone who's going to walk you through it step by step. And and I've learned that I have options, right? I have the ability today to choose. Do I want to feel like this about this anymore? Do I want to feel anything about it, right? Or do I want to let it go? You know what I mean? Or is it maybe I can choose this? Maybe I can feel different, right? So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I listen to you. I listen to you speak um, about the drugs,
Mm-hmm.
about mom,
Mm-hmm.
or about dad. Tell me about some relationships. Let's go to school. Tell me about school
So
because you're a big fella,
yeah.
bro, and you said you fight.
So
So
school was I mean I grew up in the 80s, man, you know what I mean? So like it was different, right? Like we still learned cursive, right? There was all these different things, right, that they don't do anymore. But school was it was easy, but it was hard, right? Because I was like we didn't grow up rich, right? So like I didn't have good clothes, right? I was a kind of overweight kid, right? And I would literally have to get dressed myself and get my sister ready, and then we'd walk to school, and then so I got into sports real early. Because like it was something that would keep me out of the house, right? I could leave the house really early in the morning and not have to be back till, later in the afternoon. And but man, it was fighting, you know what I mean? Like fighting all the time. I was in advanced classes, right? Like I said, I was in that it was called the GATE program, which was like gifted and talented education. So like I used to go from when I was in third grade, they did all these tests. I started kindergarten when I was 4, right? Because like back then, um, I had taken this aptitude test or something like that. But by that time I was already reading. You know what I mean? My mom had already taught me my ABCs, and I was already reading books. I mean, when I was like 6, 7 years old, bro, I was reading, Stephen King, Dean Koontz novels and stuff like that. So um, I went to, I would leave the school in third grade, and I would go from third grade to this, they call it junior high up there because I lived in Joliet, which is like right outside Chicago.
yeah, know exactly.
And I would go to this other school, and like, so in these classes, like I would learn like geometry, or I'd build like geodesic domes out of toothpicks and marshmallows, or I'd study like architecture, like Frank Lloyd Wright or something like that, and then write like essays and stuff like that on it. So and I was always in advanced reading and whatnot. So school itself, like the curriculum was it was easy, right? But it was boring. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, and then so like combine that with the fact that the home life was crap. And then combine that with the fact that like I didn't fit in. Then you've got, the abuse at home as well as, when I'm going to the babysitter's house. Like there were so many aspects that just were beating me down. And so my only way to express myself, right, until I got a little bit older was aggression. Right. And so I got into wrestling. I got into, football. I got into all those things. Anything that I could just, plant somebody. You know what I mean? Like that was, yeah.
So basically, you was taking out your aggressions through your sports.
Yeah, and it was until I started doing drugs. Yeah, you know, and I was good at it. That was the thing. It's like I found something that I was good at, right? That people are like, oh, hey, look, you know, like I stood out, right, for something positive as opposed to something negative. Because like at home, it was just,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, and I grew up with a my mom would coddle me, but then my stepdad was like, oh, you know, I come home with, you know, 5 A's and 1 B. It's not the 5 A's, it's that 1 B. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, oh, you could do better,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, it was never good enough. Nothing was ever good enough. Right. So that caused a lot of, it caused a lot of feelings of inadequacy. Right. As well as, just never feeling, uh like I was enough for anybody, right? And so like, you know, like we said about toxic masculinity, you grow up into this mindset that like, oh, my worth is measured in provision, right? What do I bring to the table? That's how much love I get, right? Quid pro quo. I give you something, you give me something in return. And so as far as like relationships and whatnot, is destroyed them.
That makes me think. Hold on. What did we learn about toxic masculinity? Where
Bro,
tell them about it.
We were. I don't want to use the word forced,
Voluntold.
but yeah, we were voluntold
Yeah.
to go watch a Barbie movie wearing pink.
Oh man.
And here you got 18 guys walking into the AMC movie theater, dressed in pink, taking pictures, and boy, we made a scene of it.
Yeah,
so we made a scene of it.
Yeah,
and we didn't know till after the fact either.
Right.
We were told we were going to go watch a Barbie movie.
Right.
Asked to wear pink, and then in a meeting afterwards, where we told why we attended this meeting in pink, and it was to address toxic masculinity, and then we were able to sit down and talk about what we knew as toxic masculinity, like what we were raised thinking, right? Real men don't cry, be tough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's all BS. You know what I mean?
But
like,
yes.
Don't get me wrong. It served its purpose. You know what I mean? Because some of the hardest things I've ever been through, I was able to get through because I was stoic. Right. And I would bottle it in, and I would just not allow myself to feel. But that's a small victory in the moment if you look at long term what it's doing to you, right? Because like it's like, okay, I won the battle, but I'm losing the war, right? And that's the sad part about it, is that it may be helping you now, but it's going to destroy you later on.
Okay, so when did you decide to? Where's the turning point? When did you find the key that took those cuffs off? Because you didn't just. They didn't just fall off.
You want a little history of as far as incarceration? Man, I mean, like I said, I went to juvie when I was like 15, right? I ended up going back to juvenile multiple times. I ended up being committed to the state when I was 16 years old until my 17th birthday. So they sent me to a boot camp, right? I was only supposed to go to juvie, but I don't know what happened with the paperwork. They sent me to Osceola because this was back in Georgia. So I was literally at a boot camp until my 17th birthday. And then on my 17th birthday, I was released, and then they sealed my juvenile record, and they said, if you screw up again, you're going to be charged as an adult. So it was, and by that time I was full in, you know, addiction and whatnot. So it wasn't long until I almost killed somebody, beating them up, robbing them, taking drugs from them. I think I was like 19, and then it carried on over into like my 20th year, and I turned 21 in an adult boot camp, but I'd never been in trouble, right? So like I got like first offenders or whatever, aggravated assault, robbery, all this stuff, and I wasn't out 3 months on probation, and I got caught at a hotel room. It got raided, and there was I had I don't know, 10 different drug charges, you know what I mean? And I didn't even have anything on me. So there's two types of possession. There's actual possession and constructive possession. So just because I was around it, you know, and nobody claimed it, everybody went to jail. But not everybody went to jail. They only took the dudes to jail. So I'm smart enough to be like, there's something off here, right? So I went and looked in the law library, and I'm like, well, this is selective prosecution, right? Because if it's an equal access case, right, that means everybody that had equal access to it should have been charged. but they only took the guys to jail and they let the girls go because the girls told them where it was. Well, if they told them where it was, they knew where it was. That means they knew about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But because it's male female, now that's selective prosecution. So I filed a motion to dismiss based on that, and they were like, "Oh well, you're already first offender's already gone, so now you're a convicted felon. So if you just plea out to 3 of these charges, well, I didn't know I'm leaving jail with like 8 felonies. You know what I mean? So like that's what started all that. But yeah, I've been to prison twice. You know, I I've got over I don't know 3,500, close to 4,000 days in incarceration between prisons, and institutions and whatnot. So yeah, it's the turning point, man, was this time. You know what I mean? I went to jail last year, uh, June 24th, 2024. I was married. I had a house up in Northport. I have a 6-year-old with her, my ex-wife. She's got 3 kids of her own. We had a business together. I had a $60,000 truck. I was a superintendent for a company that we owned. And I had and don't get me wrong, we met in addiction, right? She just managed to get on maintenance, right, and stay on it. I couldn't. I just couldn't.
What is maintenance?
Medicated assisted treatment, Matt. Like, so she's Suboxone,
Okay.
and so because I mean, when we met, we were in active addiction, and I was, using heroin and whatnot. I was homeless. We were both homeless. We were living out of her car for a while, and then she got pregnant, like off the rip, and so I was like, what do you want to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to support you regardless, but I was like, like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I want to have this baby. So I was like, all right, well, we've got to get it together. And so, and we did. It took a while, right? It took a while. Like, it was well after he was born. I got it together enough to have everything he needed when he was born, and she didn't have her kids at the time. But she got her kids back, and because like her ex had the kids in Texas and all this other stuff. That's a long story, but regardless, you know what I mean? Like, we had it, you know what I'm saying? And we actually came up, and I threw it all away, man, because I couldn't stop doing drugs,
Mm.
you know?
So when what was your rock bottom? What made you say, you know what?
Because
This,
I'd been in my son's life, right, from the time he'd been born, right? And I have a daughter that's about to be 17 years old in Atlanta, and I can't see her because of her mother, right? But I know what it's like to grow up without a dad, right? I didn't meet my father until I was 27, right? And that wasn't because of lack of trying. It literally was because my mom didn't want him to know where I was, and so she like sealed all the records and stuff and whatnot. So I know what it's like to grow up in a home without your father, right? And I love that little boy more than anything in this world. So, and that's like my best friend. So when I lost contact with him, I couldn't see him. I went from seeing him and being a part of, anything every day with him. He's like, if I went to Home Depot, he's like, Daddy, I want to ride with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my dude. I'm like, come on, man, let's go. So um I was sitting in jail. I went to jail because I don't have a license, right? And I was driving. I had a vehicle. It was all in her name. Everything was in her name, right? I don't have good credit, like none of that stuff. So I get things in other people's names, right, in order for me to facilitate being a provider. And so yeah, I got pulled over in Charlotte County, and I didn't have a license, and there was a pill in the truck, right? And so I went to jail for possession or whatever. And so I get out, get put on probation, and man, I didn't care. You know what I'm saying? I was on drug offender probation, but I wasn't on colors. So like I would party 3 weeks out of the month, and then I would try and clean up the last week, right? And then so like right before I went to jail, I ended up with endocarditis, which is like an infection in your heart from shooting dope, and I'm still doing it in the pick line. You know what I mean? Like I could
I
not
get it.
stop. And so I went back to jail for driving on suspended because I had a warrant for failing a drug test at probation. I go to jail. She divorces me. I lose everything, right? All my tools. I had $80,000 worth of tools, lost my truck, lost my house, everything, my business, everything. And so, and then I'm sitting in jail, and I'm facing another charge for beating somebody up in jail, right? And I remember sitting in the box, and um I remember sitting there, and I never believed in, I'm a spiritual person, I'm not a religious person, right? But I never believed in God. And I remember being like, just talking like we're talking right now, right? And just being like, bro, like if you're real, you know what I mean? Like I need your help. right? I could really use your help. And this is not the first time that I've said this, but I think it's probably the first time that I actually meant it, right? That I said it like from the very depths of despair, right? And I was like, I'm gonna step out on faith. And I was like, and the option to go to Choices, that residential program over there at Lightshare, was on the table, right? And I didn't know if I was gonna get it, but I was like, if you can get me in this program and you can help me turn my life around, I was like, I'm gonna do everything I need to do, right? But you got to show me that you're real, because like I've never, you know how like some people have that conviction in their heart that God's real.
Mhm.
I've never
Never
felt
had
that.
that, huh?
No.
Right.
And you can see it on people, right? You can see those people, man, and you're just like, man, like I want that so
The
bad.
glow. Yeah.
Well, but just that conviction, like
Yeah.
that 100% belief, like there's nothing you could say to them that's going to convince them that God's not real,
It gives
right?
off an energy, doesn't
Right.
it?
And I've never been able to feel that, right? And I've envied that my entire life. And I'm a very linear thinker, so I'm like, if I can't see it, if it's not tangible,
Mhm.
right, then it doesn't exist, right? Or I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, but there's just, I mean, let's face it, there's like 1,100 different denominations of Christianity.
Right.
Everybody condemns everybody. It's like supposed to be about love. We won't get into that, but I'm saying like I never felt God in my life, right? And so I remember praying and just being like, I can't do this. But if
Mm.
you're there, dude, and you can help me, right? If you hear me, I'm gonna step out on faith, right? And I'm gonna do what I need to do, but I need some help, right? And then, I mean, just one thing after another. You know what I'm saying? People, you know what I mean? Situations. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's been so much work. But the realization came to me is like, the only way you're gonna change is if the pain of staying the same, right, is greater than the pain of doing something different,
Mhm.
right? And for me, that was it, man. I've lost things so many times, relationships, people, monies, cars, everything.
Freedom.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. I mean, over and over.
So, how many times have you been to rehab?
So I've only been to rehab once. I've been in sober living in 2005 when I got out of prison because I had nowhere to go, right? But I wasn't in, like, it was technically it was a sham. You know what I'm saying? It was just a bunch of guys that had a bunch of apartments and they were charging people $200 a week and they had 6 guys in an apartment. You know what I mean? But so I've only been to rehab once.
So, what did it do for you? Because so you're in the box, right?
Yeah.
You're in confinement,
Yeah.
and you have this come to God moment,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden you realize that maybe there's another way to live, right?
Right.
And you're willing to put yourself out there, put your
Yeah.
neck out there, right? To step out in faith
Yeah.
and engage in a new lifestyle, right? And which is mind-boggling.
Mhm.
Coming from the lives we had lived for
Right.
so long, now all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm willing to throw that all away
Mhm.
and try something new.
It was so, let me back up a little bit. So while I was in the box, right? And when I say I lost everything, my stepdad died, right? So that was September 2nd, right? So my mom killed herself September 11th. September 2nd is the day my stepdad died. September 10th is the day my son was born. September 25th is my birthday, right? September 19th is my clean date, right? So it September's a rough month. It's a roller coaster month for me, right? But it I just remember hearing a lot of good stuff. Ironically, the whole reason we moved to Florida 4 years ago was so my ex-wife could work for that program for Lightshare. And so, and it's not like I didn't have the option to go to treatment, right? Because we had good insurance. I just refused to do it.
Right.
Because like she would literally sit there and tell me, I know you're high, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know what I mean? Because like once I started admitting that, there was no infidelity or anything like that, but like I was lying about all kinds of stuff, money, drugs, where I was at during work hours when I was, off getting high, whatever. Once one lie fell through, then all of these things were going to fall through, right? And it was going to make me look like a scumbag.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to do that, right? I wasn't ready to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so like I was already doing substance abuse treatment classes through Zoom for through Lightshare, right? And Miss Charlie was the lady that did the 1 hour classes with us. So when I relapsed, sorry, um my probation officer, she's like, I don't want you to die, right? And so she's like, I want you to get into treatment. And so they pushed for me to go to treatment, and I knew I was going to have to go to jail. I just didn't know for how long. So it ended up being like 6 or 7 months because of that new charge, but the new charge got dropped. And so I got sent to light share. I got sentenced to choices.
So you make it through rehab,
Mhm.
right? Let's talk about 180.
Let's talk
Right?
about it.
Give me what happens next? You make it through rehab. You come to this
Yeah.
fork in the road. You decide to take the
Right. So this isn't a mandated thing for me, right? Some people get court ordered to sober living or some kind of residential program after whatever. I didn't. This was a choice, right? And and when you're in treatment, you've got all these different we'll call them halfway houses, sober living programs, whatever, that come in and they want you to pick them, right? And the reason that I picked you guys was because you guys didn't come in there sales pitchy, right? It was you, it was Ricky, it was Tom, and you guys were like, listen, this is something that's amazing, and if you want it, right, it's here, right? But you weren't trying to sell it. You were just like, if you want to work for it, remember? Because I had to call you for what, like 3 months, 4 months before you would even. You're like, yeah, we'll talk about it, right? But I had to call you every week, right? So the vetting process alone was like, I'm like, okay, well, not just everybody's going to get in there, right? And so but I saw people's lives getting turned around, right? I saw the opportunities, the resources, right? And it was like, what am I going to do with my life, right, when I get out of jail or when I get out of treatment? Because I had nowhere to go, right? She divorced me, she took the house, everything was in her name. You know what I'm saying? So like, I have nothing now, right? I literally have nothing. Which ironically, I've never had less, but I've never been happier, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is, because I found me, right? I finally, not only did I figure out who I was, but I figured out who I wasn't, right? And that's the thing. And so like, this place has been the stepping stone, right, for me to reacclimate myself to society as a sober, right, minded, healthy adult, which I've never been, right? I've been dry. Like I said, I was, when I got out of prison before, the first time I stayed clean for 4 or 5 years. You know what I mean? But that was just me not working a program. That was just me, just trying to stay out of trouble because I didn't want to go back to prison.
So where are you now? What are your
There it is.
aspirations? What are
Okay.
your what so you got a girl, so I
Yeah.
hear.
So I have a wonderful, beautiful girlfriend, right? And she's an amazing person. I met her through all of this. And she's also on her journey, right? And I feel like God put her in my life. When I asked God to help me and to show me, I believe that He put people in my path, right, to show me things that I'd never seen or experienced before, like love without condition, right, or compassion, right, understanding, whatnot. But so since I've been at 180, I've got my own LLC, right. I do construction and renovations, right. So I technically work for myself. I make decent money. I'm working on getting my license. Let's see what else.
Wait, I don't mean. Did you say you work for yourself,
Yeah.
but you working on a driver's license?
Well, yeah, because my license is suspended in Georgia, right? So it's not suspended here; it's suspended in Georgia, right? And because it's suspended in Georgia, and it's a driving on a suspended charge, right? Technically, it's a mandatory court appearance, but I can't go to Georgia because I'm on probation here, and I also have other legal stuff there that I can't go there for, which I'm also trying to work on as well.
So you working for real, bro?
Yeah.
I'm just that
Yeah.
was the point. I interrupted
Yeah.
all that to say is, bro, you got sweat coming off your back, bro, and but it's paying off, right?
Right. Well, if anything I've learned from this experience, man, is humility, right? I ride a bike everywhere I go, or I take a Uber, right? Or I catch a ride with somebody, but I'm not too proud to ask for help or be like, hey man, I need this. I have a sponsor, right? I work the steps. I chair meetings on, I have service commitment. I get to do the things today that I never thought I was going to be able to do. And I have amazing people in my life, right, that love and support me no matter where I'm at, right? As long as I'm honest, right, and I'm willing to do the things that I need to do, right, to keep putting, the one foot in front of the other. Like when they say do the next right thing, I'm thankful today because I've been alleviated of two things, right? That obsession, right? That I have to wake up in the morning and put something in my body in order to function, and the delusion, right, that's even an option, right?
Boy, boy, you put it into perspective then.
Yeah.
What's next?
What's next?
What's next for Ben?
So what's next for me right now is getting my license back. Obviously, that's a huge thing. And getting some type of transportation. And I want to get my kid back in my life, right? I don't get to see him. When she divorced me, she got 100% custodial rights, right? I still have parental rights. But I have no custodial rights. So I mean, technically she doesn't have to let me see him if she doesn't want to, right? And so they live, 45 minutes away, and it's difficult. It's not impossible, right? But she's a soccer mom. She's got 4 kids. She's got her own business. She's busy, right?
Yeah.
And so like I removed myself from the priority list when I chose to do what I did, right? And that's unfortunate, right? Because there's a 6-year-old little boy involved who needs his dad. But as far as everything else goes, I was a superintendent, and I'd like to get back into some type of management for construction. And then once all the legal stuff gets behind me, I'd like to pursue some type of further education in psychology or something like that, being able to, help people in our position, right? As far as like, I've already went and did a rap class, right, for like peer specialist or whatever, but I can't get the certification until I've been, out of legal trouble for 2 years. So,
Well, lucky for you, there's probably a lot of people watching and listening that
Yeah.
may be able to help you on your
Yeah.
journey.
Or
Yeah.
you've helped
Yeah.
along their journey.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case because I've heard a few things myself that, when I sit and there's a saying in our community, we're not unique to one another.
No.
And a lot of what I hear you go through, I identify with, I can relate to, and that's how the magic happens.
Yeah.
Because I can say, man, this dude's going through the same thing. And if he can,
Yeah.
why can't,
Right.
that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, where are you today in references to your short-term goals? How close are you? Well, how close are you to any goal today?
So I mean, let's see. So I've already reached out to legal aid, right, as far as what to do with my son, as far as getting some type of time sharing or whatever. The reason I'm pushing for the license, and I've also reached out. Seth helped me reach out to a public defender here, and she's going to reach out to Georgia. And we talked about it. Remember
Right.
with the plea of absentia, right? If that's possible, then I will submit that, right, and then we'll get the ball rolling with that. But as far as like, I mean, I have employment, right? I have gainful employment. I would like to go back to school, right? Because I mean, let's face it, I'm 44 years old, man, and I'm not getting any younger. And I've always worked with my body, right? And I'd rather work with my mind, right? And you know what I mean? Like work smarter, not harder. But as far as you know, at some point, yeah, this is gonna be uh, you know, it's gonna be a transitioning thing, right? To where I'm gonna go and do my own thing, and move on. But while I'm here, just save as much money as I can. Utilize the resources that are here to better myself in any way I possibly can. Which is I mean financial literacy, trauma. I mean there's so many different things that we get to do that a lot of people don't get to do. And I still get to go do trauma therapy, over there at residential, with the lady who runs that. And she doesn't. I mean, that's thousands of dollars worth of therapy that I get to do for free because she's a wonderful human being and she loves me and she believes in me, right? So just continuing to better myself, right, and be of service to other people.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you, she's not the only one that
Yeah.
believes in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, Ben, thank you so much. I love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
For real now.
Love you too.
Yep.
I would like to give a huge shout out to Max Shoe Studios for
Yeah.
making this possible.
Yeah.
Oh,
Without
absolutely.
them, we couldn't have done it.
Really want to say thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Really want to say thank you. Right. So that's a wrap for this episode of Uncuffed Conversations, powered by Project 180.
Where the cuffs come off and the truth comes out.
So if something you heard here hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Somebody out there needs that extra push.
Remember, change ain't a one-time event. It's a daily grind. Every day you wake up and do better, you're already doing your 180.
We all fall, but coming back always hits harder than the fall.
keep showing up, keep believing, keep doing your 180.
Until next time,
stay free, stay real, stay uncuffed.
uncuffed.